August 6, 1945. Sadako Sasaki, a 7-year-old girl, leaves her home in Hiroshima. She's excited for school, hoping for a good seat in class. At exactly 8:15 a.m., everything changes. A single bomb drops over the city. Sadako survives, for now. But the blast sets in motion a tragedy that will unfold slowly inside her body over the next 10 years. This is not just Sadako's story. This is the story of how a war ended, how a decision was made, and how Japan became the first and only a country to experience the horrors of nuclear warfare. Why only Japan? The answer is far more complex than a single decision. In the early 1900s, Japan was changing fast. From a quiet island nation to a rising empire, they wanted land, power, resources, respect. By the 1930s, Japan had invaded Manchuria, a region in China rich in minerals and coal. In 1937, they launched a full-scale invasion of China. What followed was horrific: the rape of Nanking. Hundreds of thousands were killed, tortured, raped, burned alive. Japan wasn't just expanding, it was dominating. They believed in the concept of Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, a beautiful name for a brutal empire. In Europe, Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime began its conquest. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and World War II officially began. Over the next 2 years, Europe fell like dominoes. France, the Netherlands, Norway. In Asia, Japan continued its brutal advance. It occupied Korea, bombed Chinese cities, and saw itself as the rightful ruler of the Pacific. The United States, though still neutral, watched with growing alarm. Tensions were rising. The final spark came on December 7, 1941. Japanese bombers struck Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, crippling the American Pacific Fleet. Over 2,400 Americans were killed. Battleships were sunk. Airfields were destroyed. The next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war on Japan. 4 days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. The world was now completely engulfed. America entered the war with its full industrial and military power. The war in the Pacific was unlike any other. Battles were fought on small islands, in thick jungles, and on open seas. Civilians were caught in the crossfire, or worse, encouraged to die for the emperor. In Okinawa, entire families jumped off cliffs to avoid capture. The US began preparing for a full invasion of mainland Japan. Military estimates suggested millions of casualties on both sides. It was clear Japan would not surrender easily. While battles raged across oceans, a secret project was unfolding in the deserts of New Mexico. Its name, the Manhattan Project. Top scientists, including Albert Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer, were building the deadliest weapon in human history. On July 16, 1945, they tested it. The explosion lit up the desert like a second sun. It could be seen for over 180 miles. The ground shook. The age of nuclear warfare had begun. President Truman now had a choice: use this bomb or send American troops to invade Japan. Germany was no longer a target. Italy had fallen. Japan was the only Axis power still fighting. The US issued the Potsdam Declaration: surrender unconditionally or face prompt and utter destruction. Japan refused. So why not demonstrate the bomb on an uninhabited island first? Some scientists urged that, but others feared a failed demonstration would make the US look weak. Why not drop it on a military base instead of a city? Some proposed that too. But the goal wasn't just military damage, it was psychological shock. Japan's leaders had built a society around the emperor Bushido honor and total sacrifice. American officials believed only overwhelming devastation would force surrender. There was another factor too: sending a message to the Soviet Union. The US knew the Cold War was coming. Showing the bomb's power could reshape post-war negotiations. August 6, 1945. A B-29 bomber named Enola Gay carried the uranium-based atomic bomb, nicknamed Little Boy. Its target, Hiroshima, a military hub with a population of over 300,000. At 8:15 a.m., the bomb detonated 600 meters above the city. In seconds, tens of thousands were incinerated. The blast radius flattened everything. Fires raged. Survivors wandered the ruins, their skin hanging from their bodies. Over 70,000 people died instantly. By the end of the year, the death toll would reach 140,000. Despite the horror, Japan still hesitated. Some leaders hoped to hold out. Others waited for better surrender terms. On August 9th, a second bomb was dropped, this time on Nagasaki. The bomb, Fat Man, was more powerful, but the city's hilly terrain limited its destruction. Still, 40,000 people died instantly. The emperor finally broke the silence. On August 15th, he addressed the nation. Japan would surrender. The bombings ended World War II, but at what cost? Some argue the bombs prevented an even deadlier invasion. Others say Japan was already close to surrender. Some say the bombings saved millions. Others call it a crime against humanity. Even President Truman struggled with the decision afterward. Oppenheimer famously said,
"Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
No one can say for certain whether it was necessary, but everyone agrees the price was unimaginable. So why only Japan? Because Japan refused to surrender. Because the US wanted to end the war quickly. Because the bomb was ready. Because the world was about to split between the US and the USSR. There wasn't just one reason. There were many: political, military, psychological. But in the end, it was Japan that paid the price. And it is Japan that reminds us what happens when humanity steps too far. Today, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are cities of peace. Their survivors, the Hibakusha, continue to share their stories. Every August, people gather to remember the victims and fold paper cranes. Japan has not built nuclear weapons since. Its constitution rejects war. The memory of what happened lives on, not in bitterness, but in hope. Hope that the world will never again see another mushroom cloud. Hope that leaders will choose peace, even in the darkest hours. And hope that the next generation will ask, why only Japan? Not out of confusion, but out of commitment to never repeat it. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more stories like this, untold, unforgettable, and deeply human. This is To Be Honest, and this was Why Only Japan?